Gather round, mamas and papas, because today on Chaos and Caffeine, we're welcoming a powerhouse of wisdom and warmth, the incredible Katy Bolton. As a neurodivergent woman raising a child with ADHD and autism, Katy brings a wealth of personal insight to our community. But her journey doesn't stop there. She's also the heart and soul behind Mother Gaia, where she dedicates herself to empowering women through every stage of motherhood. With a fervent passion for women's rights and birth advocacy, Katy offers trauma-informed support, guiding mothers to create transformative birth experiences. Her holistic approach encompasses antenatal education, personalized birth plans, and nurturing therapies like pregnancy massage and reflexology. So, grab your coffee, settle in, and let's dive into a conversation that's sure to inspire and empower. Katy, welcome to the show.
Hi.
I have to ask you, what is in your cup this morning or this afternoon?
I have got a double espresso latte.
I need that.
Yeah.
I am an iced coffee gal, but it's never strong enough. Like midday, I'm like, nodding off.
Yeah. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon here, so I'm like,
Oh, so you definitely need it.
yeah.
So I need to know a little bit about your journey first before we dive into the parenting. I know you said that you were diagnosed ADHD. Do you mind sharing that journey with me?
Yeah. So it's only been very sort of recently, I mean, like in the last 6 months, that my doctor actually said, yeah, you've got ADHD, but it's one of those things because you have to be put on a waiting list, and our waiting list here at the minute is about 8 years long.
Yeah.
So I won't get the official title, but my GP was like, "Oh yeah, you've got like you tick every box, love. Yeah, no problem." I was like, "Oh, thanks." So at nearly 40 years old, having struggled through basically life,
Yeah.
and doing all the usual things of thinking that I was different to everybody else, that like even daft stuff when you sit and talk to people and you go, what you mean you don't do that? That's normal. What?
Yeah.
Why don't you do these things that I do every day just to be able to survive? And like, what do you mean
Yeah.
you can just get up on a morning? What's that all about?
That is so common for women to be diagnosed later in life, in
Mm,
particular, like after a child's diagnosis.
yeah,
I find
yeah,
that a lot of people, a lot of women that I've had on the show, they're like, checking off the questionnaire for their kid, and they're like, wait a minute,
yeah,
I've got that, you know?
yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I did. My eldest, he'll be 7 in a few months, but he's on a ADHD and autism pathway, and I'm filling in all these. I mean, the forms as well. Honestly, it's just reams and reams and reams of forms.
Yeah.
I'm going, what do you mean this is ADHD? This is what I do every day. Why is this our tick box on this list? And yeah, it because of going through that with him, I then went to the GP and went, I've ticked all of these boxes. They're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. Now I'll just add that to my list of things I have as well then, shall I? Cheers.
Yeah. It's so frustrating though. For me, I found out around 36. I was like, oh, so that's me too. And then it's like, man, like that would have been really helpful to know years ago
Mm-hmm.
when I, kind of like you said, like I didn't fit in the box. Um, and kind of, I didn't struggle academically, but I definitely struggled behavioral and socially. So it's like, man, that would have been useful, way back when to
Yep.
know. So I'm kind of
Yep.
thankful that our kids are getting the help that they need now. It just makes me kind of regret the 36 years I spent struggling.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even when you look back and you think, you don't think at the time, because especially when you're a child or when you're, say, in your teen years and things like that, you don't think there's anything necessarily wrong. I mean, not that it's wrong, but you just fall into a different category and things like
Yeah.
that. Um, but there was kind of a reason why you have that very specific and very little group of friends, is because you find out later in life that most of them are autistic or have
Yeah.
ADHD as well.
That is actually true for me
Yeah,
and my
right.
closest 3, 4 friends, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and again, because you then gravitate towards each other,
Mm.
because you're all having the same sort of struggles without necessarily knowing
Yeah.
why. When you then get later on in life and you go, oh, well, that'll be why we did that. And that'll be why we did that. And this is how we need to help our children, because they won't have a clue that it's, I don't like using the term different, but we are,
Yeah.
but it's just a different way of doing stuff. But if you don't understand it, it does make you feel very isolated and very alone. Whereas if you can go, well, actually, it's a trait that I have, and this is how I can navigate
Yeah.
it becomes a lot
Yeah.
easier.
Have you found that with your kid? I know my kid often feels different. And we try to take it lightheartedly, and he has some really great resources at school. But have you found that with your little one?
So, because it took a while for us to get anywhere with him, and to get the backing that he needed, especially with the school he was at, we found that the school that he was at were not very supportive. It was a really big school, and I mean, I'm talking there was 600-700 pupils in the primary school, and he wasn't getting the support that he needed, and obviously the other children weren't as open, let's say, to him and some of his little foibles and things like that. But he found it very overwhelming, and he would act out quite aggressively a lot of the time. So we moved him. We have moved him to a tiny little village school where the entirety of the primary school, from like reception year 1 right the way up to like year 6, which is a whole 6-year groups. There's 18 of them in the entire school. So
Wow.
it's yeah.
Yeah.
And but there's so much more support. It's not as loud, it's not as overwhelming, there's not as many other children, you're not moving from one place to another. This school is literally 2 classrooms and a playground. He, within a week, 2 weeks, settled in as if he'd been there all his life, because it was so much more grounding for him, and just making those simple little adjustments for him, it was so much easier. And it then passed over into home life as well, because then we weren't getting the can't go to sleep, having the anxiety about going to school the next day, then the whole I don't want to go to school, I'm not putting my clothes on, the screaming, the shouting, the abdabs and all that kind of thing first thing in the morning. Yeah, all right, not every morning's plain sailing, but it's nowhere near as bad as it used to
Yeah.
be. So knowing what I know as an adult and having that kind of like, well, this is how it was for me at school, even though there is a difference between how girls and how boys present with it. And I find that very obvious because I've got 3 boys. And just as a general rule, young boys are loud and aggressive, and they'd rather jump on top of each other and throw pillows around and this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And I'm not trying to be very stereotypical, they just
Yeah.
are. They just are. But then when you've got a child who is autistic or ADHD, because they don't kind of understand that social thing of what's funny and where to stop and where their boundaries are and things like that, you do find that it passes over into almost violent aggression very, very easily, even though that's not the intent behind it. It's just they just don't know when that stop line
Yeah.
is. Whereas girls tend to be, and I mean, I'm speaking from my own thought, thinking about how I was when I was a child, I would much rather be on my own in a corner, colouring in kind of thing, rather than jumping on top of
Yeah.
other people and things like that. So it becomes very obvious as well. I suppose that's why boys get diagnosed quicker and more easily, because
Yeah.
it's so much more
Yeah.
visible. Um, So yeah, it's different.
I thought this was going to be so amazing for him, and this was like literally one of his most catastrophic years. In third grade, he had a teacher who was going out on maternity leave. And for that maternity leave, he was going to be with my first grade teacher that I had 30 years prior. And I loved her. You know, I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be so amazing. It was not in so many ways. Not only did she not understand ADHD, she's 30 years back in the day, but she also kind of used my behavior as a people pleaser, you know, the very terrified child that I was. She was like, you know, your mom could do this. And so he internalized that. Even now, he's like, Mom, you don't know what it's like because you were a good student. And I'm like, I wish you didn't have that. I wish that you didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the one thing that I've seen that my little, and even though he is only like say 6, 7 years old, he is really good at things like he can read. Like, I mean, I love to read, but it took me into my adulthood before I could properly just sit and enjoy a book. Even
Yeah.
now, I would much rather listen to an Audible book and be doing 10 other things at the same time.
Yeah.
Whereas he can, I mean, he'll sit in the car and he'll read road signs, you know, like
Yeah. Wow.
yeah, he's really into it. And his maths, his understanding of mathematics is a lot higher than mine ever, well, probably ever even is now, to be
Yeah.
honest. But I can see bits in him where when he actually goes to physically write stuff, he can't hold a pen in the same way as everybody else does. He writes his letters and his numbers mirror imaged. He can't always process from one thing to another. So his understanding and his knowledge is there. But when there's whichever little bit of something in your mind that doesn't quite join up between this is what the correct answer is, now make your hand do that.
Yeah.
That bit's not there, and you just think, do you know what? He's so clever. And then you just then you start getting into the whole, well, is the education system set up properly? Is this how we should be teaching our children? All that kind of stuff. I mean, that's a different soapbox, that would.
Yeah. So I am curious, as I think that my kid has some autistic traits, what may be different for your life than ADHD parents' lives?
Well, not having very many in quote unquote normal parents that I know. It's quite hard to kind of go what's different between me and other people. So I think there's a lot of things that I let slide that maybe aren't important to me, or I don't think are important for my children. Whereas other people seem to get really aghast by it. And I mean, this is such a silly one as well, but swearing. Like, I know it's socially acceptable that like young children aren't meant to swear. Even us ladies aren't meant to swear and things
Yeah.
like that, you know. And I'm just like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, who, in a grand scheme of things, at the end of the day, what difference does it make? I'd
Yeah.
be more bothered if he walked into his nursery with a gun. Do you know?
Yeah.
there's, there's things that are bad in this world and there's things that are acceptable. And to be
Yeah.
honest, swearing isn't up there on my things of being bothered about. But then it can lead to so many other problems as well, and the sort of social acceptance of it, and just the way that other people view you because of it. If your child happens to swear in front of other children and things like that, and you just think, is that really a big issue?
Yeah.
Or is that something that is just a social thing, and depending on where you are in the social ladder, depends on whether that's a boundary or not. Then you've got other things as well that my son will do, and I'll just go, I don't have a clue why you've done that. That just doesn't, and again, in the grand scheme of things, it makes no difference.
Yeah.
But say when he's having a bath, he won't get out of that bath until he's pulled the plug out and watched every last little bit of water go down that plug hole, and then he can get out. That's fine. You try and get him out that bath before that water's gone, not happening. And you just think, well, what? You're getting cold. You're soaking wet.
Yeah.
You're sitting in a bath. Why? But
Yeah.
there's obviously something for him in there that's become his normal or his little ritual or whatever it is that he's got in his head,
Yeah.
that other people wouldn't even enter their normal daily routine. But that's something that we've then got to add into. Well, it takes an extra 5 minutes to get out of a bath because we've got to pull the plug out and wait for the water to go out and things like that. So it's little things like that, and like where a label is in clothes, because if it's in a certain place and it's irritating them, you've then got to cut it out, and you've got to cut it out in a way that's not going to leave a hole in your jumper. And then you've got to, some days, the little bits in the bottom of socks, some days that can be like the world has imploded in on us and we can't do anything because these socks are just not right.
Yeah.
But then other days he's just not bothered by it, and it makes no one cares.
Yeah.
But then you've always got to filter in that into your normal routine of, is today going to be a day where we're going to be 5 minutes late because the socks aren't right, or because the label's not fitted in right, or because these trousers don't have a button on the front of them, or whatever it is that most of the people, they wouldn't even think of in their normal day, let alone have to plan in to add extra time onto stuff. So I find it's a lot of little things that kind of make stuff different. And I don't know why, but they bother me more than the big things do. Because you kind of get used to that whole, if they have an emotional breakdown and there's something going on for them where they're overtired or they're overstimulated or it's just not going right in their little world for them, and boom, end of world. I can deal with that so much more easier than I can with, I don't want these socks on. It's like, just put the bloody socks on. Whereas if you give me a full-on breakdown, I'm like, okay, let's breathe. Let's count this out. Let's get back to a nice regulated state. Now, what is it that we need to do? And are you hungry? Shall we get a drink? Like that kind of thing. Yeah. I can deal with that so much better. And I don't know, again, whether that's possibly an ADHD trait, because give me something really calm and I will worry about it. I'll fret about it. I will have it going on. I will have conversations with people that I will think about forevermore that they'll have instantly forgotten about. Put me in an emergency situation where I've got to do CPR on someone and dial 999 and get an ambulance. Oh, I'm all over that.
Yeah. I know. Now that you say that, I've always been like, I'm really good in panic situations. So that definitely could be an ADHD response.
Yeah. Something about whether we can just deal with a lot of things all at once really quickly because we're very good at doing 100 things. But if we wanted to sit and focus on something, no, I've got to have the radio on, I've got to have this going on, I've got to be doing such and such. I mean, even this morning, I've got my own podcast, and I knew that because I'm going away. It's like, all right, I need to get a couple of weeks worth edited out and sorted so that I'm not panicking about it when I come back. So obviously my pot was on for my wax so I could wax my eyebrows. I had my tint on my eyebrows because I know I'm going away. I'm editing it and I'm listening to a completely different podcast on my phone at the same time. It's like, why can't you just do one thing?
My son's dad has to have music playing in the background really loud to stay on track. And that can either be really helpful or really harmful. So I'd never thought about it before, but I asked my kid, I was like, does that bother you? And he was like, no, I don't even realize that it's on. And I was like, oh, because it really bothers me. But for him, I guess it's the same type vibe. That loud music just keeps him in focus of what he's doing, where he's at. And I was like,
Yeah, I think sometimes as well, it depends on obviously us and our frame of mind and where we are and whether we've had a long day and enough sleep and all that kind of stuff as well. Because I've noticed that if I choose to do it, so this morning I was perfectly fine. I was just ticking away, doing all the things that I needed to do. I've got 2 podcast episodes done. They're up and they're scheduled. I've got everything I needed to do. My eyebrows are on fleek, like
They
I'm
are.
happy, right? But if that was a different environment, if I was at home, if the TV's on and someone's got a tablet on and one of the other kids is doing something and something else, then that becomes overwhelming and that becomes too much, because these are things that I haven't chosen to do. These are things that are in the background that are annoying the living daylights out of us.
Yeah.
So I think, again, it depends on what it is that you're doing and what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And there's also the difference between, if I'm doing something that I know that I've got to do and I'm looking for any excuse not to do it. Like when I was doing my my college degree, my kitchen cupboards have never been tidier, because they had to be in the right order and they had to be facing the right way around and all that kind of stuff, just because I didn't want to do my dissertation.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that, if I'm really into something and I'm on a hyper focus of something, and it doesn't matter whether that be a new hobby or whatever it is, literally the world could be caving in around me and I wouldn't notice it, because I'm so focused on this one thing that I'm doing. I forget to eat, I forget to drink, I forget to go to the toilet. There's one very funny story a few years ago. I don't know whether you're familiar with a computer game called Minecraft.
I am.
I got very, very into, even as an adult, I got very, very into it because it's so simplistic, but there's so much to do.
Yeah.
I had been sat on this game with a friend of mine, and I can't even remember what it was we were building, but I'd got into this point where I was tired and every part of my body was like, you're hungry, you need to go to the toilet, you need to drink, blah, 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 blah. But because I was so hyper focused on this one thing, and it was really stupid as well, I'd spawned in a really weird point where chickens also spawn, but it had glitched. So you could hear the chickens, but you couldn't find them. But in my head, I was like, I will find these chickens. I've got to find these chickens. They must be here somewhere. So that was it. I spent 3 hours digging a hole around myself, looking for chickens that were never going to happen. It wasn't until my friend went, I think you need to come off there, and showed me a mirror. My hair was sticking up in every end. I had bags under my eyes. I was like, I'm just going to shut the laptop and walk away now.
Yes, I am familiar with Minecraft, and my son is familiar with Minecraft, so I am very familiar with the chickens.
Yeah, the chickens, honestly, they don't need to exist.
One thing that you said in there when you were talking about your kiddos' characteristics, it made me think of the water going down the drain. Like, we all have that. When you said that, I was like, man, I have some characteristics of not exactly watching the water go down the drain, but I have some water going down the drain. And hyperfocus is like one of those things. Like, I'm 40. My kid is an only kid. So for 3 weeks, he came home and he was like, Mom, I want to be better at soccer. Not so that he could like join a team. He wanted to be better at soccer for recess at school. So for 3 weeks in the freezing temperatures, snow, ice, everything, he and I are outside playing soccer. So the other day I was like, would you like to go out and play soccer? He was like, no, I really want to get better at this jump rope thing. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, we've moved on now. Yeah.
At least you can do that inside and I don't have to participate.
Yeah, I can't do jump rope. I'd wet myself.
For sure.
I'm not in that place or that age. Yeah, it's mad how you go through phases of stuff like that as well. I mean, I'm bad for going through phases of things, but what I've found is that I can sort of circulate my phases. So I have a lot of things like knitting, crochet, embroidery, all that kind of stuff. And I just sort of have a box that is full of all of these things.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of go through phases where 2 or 3 months I'll just do crochet for a couple of months, or I'll find something specific that I want to make, and that'll be the thing that has the hyper focus on it, will be this specific pattern or a toy or whatever it is. But God forbid, don't ask me for something. Or absolutely do not say, could you make me such and such? I'll pay you for it, because it's never happening.
Yeah.
Wait until I've made it and then go, can I buy that from you? because if I feel like I've got to do it, it becomes a job and then I don't like it anymore.
I get that. I get that a lot.
Yeah. Or I'll do really crazy I say crazy things that some people, I kind of almost get a kick out of people going, something wrong with you, isn't there? And I'm like,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So my latest one is wild swimming and ice water buckets.
Really?
So I now have like an ice pod in my backyard. And shockingly enough, all through summer, brilliant. I was in every night. I could stay in there 10, 15 minutes in this ice bucket in the height of summer. Brilliant. The second it got cold outside, I was like, nah,
Yeah.
it's cold now.
If you can manage in the cold, I've heard it's like really, really great for your nervous system and reset.
Mm,
But
yeah. I
I
mean,
have not done
it's
that.
one of those things that it's one of those things I do like, but it's very temporary. Um, I I do like my pod, don't get me wrong. But like I said, it's one of those things where I'm more bothered about it being dark. And our next door neighbour's fence, it's only about 2 foot
Mm.
tall. So I'm going out in my backyard, stripping down my underwear and getting in this thing, and they're all eating their dinner in the next room. It's like it's not quite the same that having an audience, you know? Whereas when I go out, like actually wild swimming with a group of other people who are doing the same sort of thing, and you're having that bit of chat, and everyone's very like-minded, and that kind of stuff, and you egg each other
Yeah.
on. It's more that kind of thing, the social release of it, and just being able to get out and literally chilling
Yeah.
out for a little bit. So yeah, but it is really nice. I mean, like I said, I do much prefer. Well, I think everybody much prefers it in summer when it's warmer. Um, but I have found when I've had really bad bouts where my mental health hasn't been so well and things like that, I do find it really good. I mean, even if it's only like at the end of a shower, having 30 seconds, putting it on to freezing cold and having that last 30 seconds just blasting off, it is it kind of shocks you into being here and
Yeah.
now just for a little bit, to go back into your own body rather than being off. I should have done this, I should have done that, what's this going to do, where's this going to go, kind of
Yeah.
thing. Especially at your mental health side of it, it really does kind of, like I say, it shocks you back into the here and now, which sometimes you do need
Yeah.
that, like a computer being shut off and turned back on again.
Bring me out of my I'm one of those the fake shower arguments. I'm always having scenarios in my head like that never happen in the shower.
Yeah, I used to do that. Someone told me once about having, like Bluetooth headphones, pretending you're on the phone when you're going for a walk.
Yeah.
Like, there's nobody
Yes.
there.
Yeah. I actually do that in my neighborhood, but it's just so that I don't have to speak to one specific neighbor. I can just like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm
Yeah, just talk, yeah, right. No, I get that one too.
Looking for some new toys and tools that your ADHD kiddos will love? Play Therapy Supply has you covered with a great selection of toys, games, and fidgets that can be used by ADHD children, their parents, caregivers, and professionals alike. From fidget toys that help children calm down, de-stress, and focus, to social emotional learning resources to help kids understand their feelings and emotions, to games and activities designed to improve emotional regulation. Play Therapy Supply has it all. For thousands of items and fast and free shipping, visit playtherapysupply.com today. So you are, and I have not heard much about it, an antenatal specialist, and I want to know if your own parenting journey brought you there or how you ended up there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, most of the stuff that I do and how I got into it is all personal life journeys. So even from a young age, I was very sort of holistically minded. I really loved like looking at crystals and um, even sort of like very magical sort of stuff as a young, but like witches and spells and all that kind of stuff. I mean, even as a teenager, my favorite TV program was Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I absolutely adored Willow the Witch. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things. I kind of got into it through that, but more so looking at things like I'm sure it was a science teacher when I was a teenager who said like penicillin comes from let me get this right. Penicillin comes from mold, and there's another one that comes from the bark of willow trees, and it's like these things are naturally occurring in like the natural world.
Yeah.
It's just as humans we've learned to develop that or make them artificial and use them in different ways. So I was very much like, well, what are all these natural things that we've got to, and that's kind of led me on to aromatherapy, using lavender for healing properties and that kind of stuff. So when I trained as a holistic therapist. I did reflexology, aromatherapy. I went on to be a Reiki master teacher, and kind of opened up my own practice using those things to help people. And my main focus to start off with was mental health, because that's what I've struggled with for most of my life, has been in and out of anxiety and depression and things like that, which obviously are then symptoms of having undiagnosed ADHD.
Yeah.
So as I kind of then got into the relationship that I'm in now, which we've just celebrated our 11th year together last
Wow.
week, so that was nice.
Congratulations.
Thank you. When we decided that we were going to have children, we actually found it really difficult. And it took us ages to conceive. And then we had 2 miscarriages. So it was quite traumatic. But because of that, I started then looking into, well, what's the holistic side of this? What can I do to help myself? So sort of changed my diet, looked at my lifestyle a bit more, made myself a little bit more healthier, then looked into reflexology. So I'm also a fertility reflexologist as well. So kind of started doing all that. So that when we did fall pregnant with my eldest, who is the one who has ADHD and autism, that then became right, well, how can I help other people? What else can I do? Since then, I've had 2 more children. So I've got 3 boys altogether, and 3 very different births and experiences and things like that. And because of the experiences that I've had, I have gone into antenatal and specialising in birth trauma. My second birth, which was in 2020 in lockdown, was horrific. Basically, it was not a nice experience. I didn't have enough support, or any support really. It was not nice. Everything about it was just not nice. And it kind of sprung a little thing in me that said, this can't be the norm. This shouldn't be happening. There should be more support out there, even if all it is more education or more information in the ether to say, look, these are your choices. This is what you can do. This is what's available. This is the support you can have. This is how your body works. Because I found out, especially through, like I said, doing my own podcast, talking to other mums and other specialists in their field and things like that, there's a lot of information out there, but none of us know what it is.
Yeah.
So being able to have somewhere where you can go and just go, right, what are the essentials? What do I need to know? What do I need to prep for? How can I understand me, my body, and how I'm going to give birth, or how birth works, and what support that I need. I'm so big on support. You can be the biggest, baddest, most amazing, sassiest, bitchiest woman out there and still be the most meekest, vulnerable person when you are in birth. And the things that you wouldn't normally let happen to you, around you, for you, if you are in birth, I am a big believer in saying that it doesn't matter how empowered you think you are, or you are, if you are in pain or you are concentrating on giving birth, if someone says something to you that you don't agree with, you're not necessarily even going to be able to take a breath to say no. Hence why you need people around you that know what your preferences are, how to support you, how to talk to you, what you do and don't want, to be able to be your voice for when you can't use yours.
Yes.
And whether that's your partner, your mum, your sister, a doula, I don't care who it is.
Yes.
But you absolutely need support. And it's not just that moment that you're giving birth. It's all the way through pregnancy. It's all the other things that are going on. It's the mental health stuff of it. It's afterwards. It's looking after a brand new baby. It's understanding what you need to do. First time, I'm hands up, I was the most naive first time mum. It took me to my second child before I realised that those all-in-one baby grows have a thing to make it mittens. 2 years down the line, oh, what's this? But you don't realise. You just think, oh, you know, it's a tiny little baby. You feed it, you change its bum. What more can there be to it? Yeah.
So much to it.
Yeah. and not even, I mean, the physical stuff. Yeah, you can change their bum, you can wipe them down, you can wash them, you can feed them, you can burp them, you can put them down to sleep. It's the being up every 2 hours to feed them. It's the literally being touched constantly. It's the not being able to make plans. It's the not being able to leave the house. It's everything else that kind of comes with it that you don't realise comes as part of having a baby. And you don't really get that. And then add on top of that, if you have a baby who's autistic, who can't tell you that because they're a baby, but you're thinking, this isn't working right. That's not working right. There's something wrong. Oh, being told you're an overprotective first-time mum. Don't get me started on that one. But there's so many other things and then if you then as a mum are autistic or have ADHD, especially if you don't know about it, or you get postnatal depression or any of these other things, it's just layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of other stuff that if you have never heard of it, you've not been through it, you don't have a support system, is there any wonder why there's so many of us with traumas and depression and all this other stuff? So my main aim was, I'm going to get as much education and as much stuff out there for people to access so that they're not alone, so that they can access extra support, so that they do understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Because if I had me as I am now 6 years ago when I was having my first, I'd be a lot better off.
Yeah. I love a couple of things that you said in there. One, about having the support that you need for when you are extremely vulnerable and cannot say so yourself. I had a military hospital birth, so I did not have a lot of control in many ways. But one of the things was, you fill out the birth plan that you think is going to go to a T. And I had checked on all my boxes that I did not want a student in any part of my procedure. But after, contracting for 2 days and then finally being admitted, it's like, let's do it. But every step of the way, there was a student or a trainee in some part of my care. And I was like, that's not, you guys made me fill out the paper and then heavily drugged, I'm miserable. And I was like, just whatever. But that was one thing that you said that really registered with me.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big things that I've got, which I do kind of say to people, like, I will give anybody half an hour of my time for free to go through a birth support plan, because it's all very well having a birth plan where you tick in, yes, I'll have vitamin K, yes, I'll have an epidural, no, I don't want this, blah, 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 blah. Because as you will find out, it either doesn't get read or it doesn't get listened to, or if it's only plan A and something doesn't go to plan, then that goes out the window and again, it doesn't get listened to or doesn't get read. Yeah. Whereas if you've got a birth support plan and you have nominated hubby, wife, grandma, whoever, or doula, these people are my support. These are their roles in that support. This person is my voice. So I have told them that under no circumstances am I having a vaginal examination. Therefore, if I can't speak, that person is going to stand between me and whoever it is who's saying, I need to stick my hands up her, and go, no, you're not. She doesn't want you to do that. It's not happening.
Yeah.
You also need someone it can be the same person, but you need someone who's an emotional support, who's going to be down there being your cheerleader, holding your hand, telling you to dig deep, telling you you're safe, giving you the information so that if something does go wrong or something isn't going to plan or there needs to be a decision that's made, they're the ones who can say, look, this is happening. It's going to be a change of plan. I know you said you didn't want an epidural, but this is going to be really, really painful. Do you still want to do it? Do you want to have another talk about it in 10 minutes time? And be that go-between that, if I only have to talk to one person, that's the person that I'm talking to. And then they can talk to everybody else in the room and do whatever needs to be done.
Yeah.
You need that support because, like I said, if something does change, the only way that you're going to have a birth plan that has every eventuality on it, it's going to be about 100 pages long. You're going to have plan A, plan B, plan C. If this happens, this is going to happen. If that happens, I want this to do the blah, 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 blah. And you cannot plan for every eventuality.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always said, I always try and use really sort of like stupid, outside the realm of possibility kind of examples. One of them being, well, what happens if we get invaded by aliens? That won't be in your birth plan, but it might happen. So it's one of those things that you kind of go, yes, you can have a birth plan and you can say, look, my ideal birth would be at home in a bath with twinkly lights on and plinky plonky music in the background with whale calls in it and blah de blah, and it's going to last for 3 hours and baby's just going to slide out and it's going to be amazing. Cracking, lovely. You have that idea, and if it goes to plan, brilliant. If not, you need to have that support in place, so someone who knows how to talk to you, because I'm one of these people who, when shit hits the fan, I'd rather I had one person came to me and went, look, it's gone tits up.
Yeah.
This is what's happening. This is your choice. What do you want to do? So that my little ADHD brain goes, oh, panic. This is my choice. I'm going with B. Yeah. Let's do this. And it's still my choice. But there's some people you could say that to. It would send them into such a reel. It would panic them so much. It would make anything 10 times worse. In which case, you need to know that that person is, I know you've got this in your plan. We just need to take 3 seconds. We're going to have to transfer you into hospital, or it's going to be an emergency C-section, or whatever it is, and explain to them in their way, with their communication, how they need to be spoken to for it to be still calm, for it to still be their choice, for them to still be in control, even though shit's hit the fan. And you can still have that, and you can still have a controlled, empowered birth, even if everything goes wrong. I mean, my first podcast episode is actually my best friend, and she got preeclampsia, and her little one was born. Oh, was he 12 weeks early? Like, he was really early. He shouldn't have been born until the beginning of January, and he was born in November. So, wow. He was really, really early. But her birth story and the way that she says it, because she understood what was going on, because the nurses and the midwives and everyone told her what her options were and asked her at every eventuality what she wanted to do. She has this thing about how brilliant her birth was. It was an emergency C-section. She was absolutely off her face on every drug in the world. And she thought it was brilliant that she had a catheter in, because she didn't have to go to the toilet to have a wee. But those similar circumstances, if you then took someone completely different, but you didn't explain anything to them, and you just took them off the street and said, we're bringing you in for an emergency C-section, you've got preeclampsia, now get on that bed. That's not a good birth, you know? So it is absolutely about the support that you've got and the understanding that you've got. And this is for anybody. This isn't just for people who have got ADHD or trauma or autism or anything like that. The support works for everybody in that situation, but I also think it works for everybody in any situation. You think about anything else that happens in your life, the big things that go on, even things that are really good. So say like a wedding. most beautiful day of your life, you know, blah, blah, blah. You get to go and try on wedding dresses, you get to try different champagnes or whatever it is. And I've never been married.
Yeah.
It's not my idea of a good day out, to be fair, but other people, they plan it for years.
Yeah.
Now you imagine if you've planned this amazing thing and I don't know, someone spills red wine on your wedding dress before you've been married, right? That could be absolutely devastating.
Mm.
But if you've got the support around you and someone goes, I know how to get that out, give me 10 minutes. It's now become a funny story of, did you know half an hour before we got married, I had red wine stain all down me.
Yeah.
It works in every scenario, in every situation, and more so for us who have got ADHD or autism, because if we've got that support network about us, that little bit of something that for most normal people, it would be, I've had a bit of a shit day, I'm going to go to bed early, start again tomorrow. Whereas we would be sitting on it for days, for weeks. We could have done this better. We should have done it that way. We should have said this to this person. I should have seen this coming. Someone said something really vague to me 5 months ago, which absolutely should have crystal ball told me that this was happening. You can go over these things all the time, but if you've got someone who is your support system, who knows how your brain works, who knows how you work, who can sit you down and say, you were never going to know this. This isn't something that you need to mull over. Talk to me about it. Get it over. What do we need to do to support you through this so that you can go to bed early and wake up tomorrow and it be a new slate?
Yeah.
So yeah, I waited on again all the time.
Man, I wish I would have had you 9 years ago when I was going through that.
Yeah, do you know the amount of people who say that to me?
Yeah. I mean, really, like, I was 30 years old, so you think you're much wiser than 20-somethings or teenagers having kids, but
Yeah.
really, like, I probably wasn't. Like I said, you have this grand idea of how everything's going to happen. Mine was literally nothing like what I had written down for my ideal day, and I was kind of just drug along in every scenario because I was in so much pain. I failed to dilate, and they let me do that for 48 hours too long. So basically, for 48 hours, they were drugging me every 12 hours and then sending me home.
Oh.
And so by the time it was time to actually have the baby, I was, like you said, drugged off my everything. Like I said, I was at that point, I was just so miserable. I was like, whatever you have to do, just do it. And then one thing that really stuck out to me, and you're like, if somebody says something to you that you don't like, I had a terrible midwife. She told my partner, she was like, she's not pushing. And he was like, well, what do you mean? And she was like, she's not pushing because if she had, she would have already pooped the bed. And I was like,
yeah,
at the
not everybody does
time,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
was able to say like, she has to go. But if I had,
Yeah.
had the capacity, I would have been like, lady, I have been medicated every 12 hours for 72 hours. Like, I don't have control over my body. Like, like,
Yeah.
I can't push. Like, but yeah, it
Yeah.
was just not a lovely experience. And to,
Yeah. I mean, even when you get things like that, when you've got, say, people who've had epidurals, they lose the ability to be able to feel anything
yeah,
from the waist down, at which point you do need to be told, right, you are now having a contraction, you need to push here
yeah,
and things like that. Whereas under other circumstances, when you don't have an epidural or you're going completely natural and things like that, you don't need to be told because your body's doing what it needs to do. But like I said, under certain circumstances and when things aren't going right and things, you do need to be kind of told, right, this is what's going on, this is what we need to do. And given the choice, do you want me to tell you when you
yeah,
need to push? Because if you don't know that that's a thing, you're not going to
yeah.
ask for that.
Mm. And that's what you do. You work with people leading up to and after, or how does your services work? Yeah.
All the way through, all the way through, all the way through. So I mean, I've got one of my really good clients. I've known her for years and years and years. She actually originally came to me for support with help for a lower back issue and to get to know her body better so that she didn't become pregnant. fast forward a few years down the line, where she's then gone through a divorce, had a new partner, this, that, and the other, and she's gone, right, I want to get pregnant. Now I need you to support me through this. And I'm like, okay. So it was about using the same information on, like, well, this is how your body works, this is how long your menstrual cycles are, this is when you're most likely ovulating, etc., etc. But then using that to, right, this is your fertile window. Now we need to do something in the, you know how we were avoiding it for all these years? Now we need to be doing something in this space. But also, again, like, because she had a lower back problem, it was a case of like supporting her through that, and then looking at her options for when she was giving birth and how she wanted to do that. Her options around whether she wanted an epidural, whether she wanted an elective C-section, whether she wanted to go completely natural. All of these things that you can literally, even before she got pregnant, we were having these discussions because it was a case of like, well, this is going to be a big issue for you when giving birth. So how are we going to navigate that? And that's it. Everybody's different. Everybody's got a different situation. Everybody's got a different mindset. Everybody's got a different sort of outlook on how they want to do it. And being able to have somebody who has that knowledge, and you can say, look, this is what I want to do, but I don't know how to get there. It's almost like say like work coaches and mentors, business mentors and things like that. I'm not going to let you into a secret. Most of the time, I don't know what I'm doing on social media and podcasting and like, I know how to do my job, but telling everybody else how I know how to do my job is a completely different thing. So me being able to go to a mentor and say, look, I want to be earning X amount of money at the end of every month because that's what's going to make my life better. This is what I can do as a job. Now, how do I get here to here? It's very, very same in birth work and having children and things like that. Depending on how far ahead they've thought, it could be a case of, I want to be a mum of 3 children and I want 2 years between each of them. And at the moment, I have no children and I'm a first-time mum, right? How do I get from here to being a mum of 3? Where do we go? How do we do that? What's the step along the way? What are my choices? How do I hold my hand through this kind of thing? You've also got those extra steps in between as well. You might have gone to start off with, I want 3 kids. You have your first one, you go, I'm not doing that ever again.
Same.
Right? So depending on your life experience, what happened, what changed, what went on for you, you can still change your mind all the way through, even down to, I always say as well, like, you can start having contractions. Your water could break. You could have been completely on the absolutely holistic. I'm having no medication. I'm not going to hospital. I'm staying at home. I don't care. I'm going up a tree with twinkly light, whatever it was. You get 10 minutes into that and you go, nah, so this, give me all the drugs. But that's your decision. That's your choice. If you've got that knowledge of what it is that you can do, as long as it's you making that decision and it's not somebody coercing you into it, you can do what you like.
And is that what your podcasting is about? Is it about your business or mom life or everything?
It's a bit of everything. What I tend to do, or what I try to do, is I alternate it from one week to the next. So what I'll do is I'll get, 1 week will be a real life mum's birth story. So whether that be something went wrong, whether it be something went really right, whether it's elective C-sections, whatever it is, it's a true gritty mum's point of view on their birth and how it went for them. And I've got everything in there. I've got miscarriages, I've got epidurals, I've got elective C-sections, emergency C-sections, I've got water births, I've got, you name it, there's a bit of everything, of every type of birth in there, and the perspective of each person. And what I've found is that the most excited people, or the people who are most passionate about births, are actually the ones who have had tragedies or traumas or things gone wrong, and they're like me, they just want to get their story out there to say, this happened to me. These are your choices. This either support or you don't have to let it happen to you. These are your other choices to be able to do that. And that's the bit I like getting out. The alternative ones from that are then people in the birth world. So I've had chiropractor, I've had a pregnancy yoga instructor, I've had a hypnobirthing instructor, I've had a sex coach. So I've had lots of different people who have all had their little input from different, but again, you find running themes. They all sort of become almost the same about knowing how your body works, being able to keep calm, knowing what your choices are, being in control of what's going on, but they've just got different names. So I'm finding that really interesting, that how yoga can feed into hypnobirthing, can feed into chiropractic, can feed into reflexology and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's really, really good. The two that I've done this morning, one's a lady who's a chiropractor, hence why that's on my brain. And she says things about she says things about like being able to align your body, and it's not just about working, say, with your hips, which would be very, very obvious, but it's a thing of like being able to align yourself correctly, being open. One of my favorite sayings in the birth world is floppy face, floppy fanny. It's just I think it's hilarious. But it's how your facial muscles and the everything in your head is connected to the rest of your body, and how if, say, you are laughing or smiling and open, that opens the rest of your body out and relaxes you more. So whilst childbirth is painful, don't get me wrong, but you can make it better, you can make it easier, you can make it so that it's not as painful. Whereas what another one that goes through, like I spoke to a hypnotherapist about it, the chiropractor about it, the yogi teacher that she spoke about exactly the same thing. If you don't understand yourself, if you become frightened and the pain is making you more frightened and you go into fight or flight, you then curl in on yourself. That then makes everything tighter, that makes everything worse, that makes everything more painful. And then you have this cycle of pain and fright, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. Whereas if you can stop that pain and stop that cycle, you can open yourself up. And yes, you're still in pain, you're still having contractions. There's still a baby trying to get itself out of a really small hole. But it's easier and it's not as overwhelming, and you can guide yourself through that. And if you've got the right support, again, it all goes around in circles, and it all to me seems like the same thing.
Yeah. Will you tell the listeners what the name of your podcast is and where they can find you? Because I'm sure by now everybody's like, yes.
Yeah, so my podcast is called the Mother Gaia Birthie Pod. You can find it on Spotify and on YouTube. And the easiest place to find me is on Instagram, and it's at mother_Gaia_Crabtree.
Katy, I will get caught up and do this all day, but I know you have a trip to plan for, and I know I have taken you literally all over the board today. But if you could leave the listeners with one thing, whether it be parenting, antenatal services, anything, if you could leave them with one, what would it be?
Everybody's journey and everybody's way of thinking is different. Everybody has their own plans and everybody has their own thing. Find one person who can be your support and tell them everything, literally everything. Sit with them and go, I want this. This is how my brain works. This is what I want. This is plan B. This is plan C. This is how I want my life to look, etc., etc. And whether that's your partner, your mum, your sister, whoever it is, and that will take you right the way through life. If you have that rock who can just sit and you go, blah, 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 and everything becomes right with the world, then that is my thing. So whether you're going to do that, whether it's going to be your birth plan, your wedding, a big event, or just general day-to-day life, because you're an ADHDer and things are just way bigger than they actually are. If you've got someone that you can go at the end of the day and they can go, yep, I can see that, but you don't need to worry about it. Life is fine.
I should have known that would have been your final answer, and that was the perfect ending. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing all of this valuable knowledge.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
And that, my fellow Chaos Navigators, is a wrap on this incredible episode with the one and only Katy Bolton. If your mind isn't already buzzing with inspiration, go check out her work at mothergaia.co.uk and give her a follow. You won't regret it. Katy's insight into neurodivergent motherhood, birth advocacy, and raising an ADHD and autistic child is exactly the kind of real talk we need more of in this space. If this episode spoke to your soul, or at least made you feel a little less alone in this beautiful chaos, make sure to subscribe and maybe leave us a review, but more importantly, share it with a fellow ADHD parent with us in the trenches. And as always, keep embracing the chaos, fuel up with caffeine, and remember, you're doing an amazing job. Until next time.